Hello, hello. This is Kim Ades from Frame of Mind Coaching, and you have just joined the Frame of Mind Coaching podcast. Today, I have a wonderful guest who is full of information, full of experience, and full of expertise on the subject of finding the right talent and also finding the right position if you're looking for a career path. His name is Mark Marshall, coming to us from a company called Digitalent. Did I say it right? Mark,
You
welcome.
absolutely did perfectly. Hi, Kim. How are you?
Good. So you're in New York,
That's correct. I'm in Manhattan.
you're in Manhattan, and you've been running this company for how long?
We're coming up on 10 years, actually.
Okay.
It's
So
it's a heck of a time to have a 10-year anniversary during COVID, but we're still here and we're still fighting.
you're still fighting. So
Yes.
you have kind of a very interesting view on the workforce. Let's call it like that, right? So you have this, maybe a bird's eye view of everything that's going on out there, both
hmm
from the employer point of view and the employee point of view. So just give us a bit of a state of the union. Like, what is happening? How many people have been laid off, fired, not hired even over this span? You can say percentages, however you want to share that information. What have you been seeing?
Sure. So I can definitely speak from the perspective of our industry, our particular focus at Digitalent. Our clients are primarily in advertising,
Okay.
ed tech as an education technology, and also specifically pharmaceutical advertising. I'd say general advertising has really suffered. Um, we've seen a lot of our candidates have been laid off, put out of work, which has been really tough. In financial education, they're also suffering greatly. I mean, with the closure of schools, they're losing a lot of money. And pharmaceutical advertising is interesting because they're still going strong. The companies themselves, but they're not really hiring that much. So it is a good time. The one safe industry from our perspective has been healthcare, pharmaceutical, for obvious reasons. It's
Right.
fairly recession proof. Um,
And
so
so,
does that
like,
answer?
so
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, so lots of people are getting fired, lots of people are getting laid off.
yeah.
And this is a reflection of the fact that, revenues are severely impacted. But what do you think it says about what's to come, about our future? Like, what do you expect? Is that going to be a long-term thing that a lot of people are going to be off of work, or will this turn around? Again, your best guess. I don't, I know that you're not a forecaster, but what do you
hmm
think?
So I can tell you, we've certainly right now we've been slow. I'd say April was the worst. We're starting to see some, glimmers of hope. I think what's going on right now is a lot of people are, like with, like in times of these, people tend to, there's a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, but then they also tend to reflect and learn and adapt. And we're starting to see, for what it's worth, the one positive thing that's coming out of this time for myself, our clients, is people are, taking a step back and saying, all right, well, what else can we be doing? What can we be doing differently um, in order to, continue, um, continue working and being productive members of society. It's been a huge shift, obviously. Everyone going remote. I think people have been surprised at how effectively many companies are able to continue working remotely.
Mhm.
Like we're on Zoom right now. I mean, yeah, like Zoom has been a godsend
Yeah.
for us, every other company out there. So I think that's one thing that's where people are starting to say, okay, this could actually work. So I think it's like right now it's people are just initially it was just like we got hit over the head with a sledgehammer. What a shock, what a surprise. But then as we have as people have adapted to working in remotely, they've they've realized that, hey, we can actually do this, we can actually continue to do our jobs.
Mhm.
um, at least those, those folks that aren't needed out in the field, like, the wonderful, like essential
Right.
workers in
Yeah.
healthcare and, delivery and so on and so forth. So,
Are you finding that some employers are still hiring?
yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So,
Um,
what is your recommendation for finding the right candidates and for sorting through, I'm sure, so many applications right now, but so how do you help an employer navigate through that?
it's probably not terribly different than how it was previously. I
Okay.
mean, as long as you have, I mean, like it's recruiting still is still alive and well. I mean, frankly, I know a lot of recruiters, like in-house recruiters who've lost their jobs, but I've been in touch with a lot of fellow agencies. And that we still exist, we're still available. I mean, certainly, not to give myself a plug or the industry a plug,
Go for it.
um, but yeah, I mean, we're ready and willing. As a matter of fact, yeah, we're starting to adapt and shift to other industries as well.
Mhm.
But for folks, for employers who are getting bombed with resumes, I would say, yeah, I mean, it's in order to stay sane, it certainly does help to have a middle person, a recruiter who can sift through all those resumes
Mhm.
and will understand, have an understanding grasp on your particular area of expertise. So they're actually forwarding the right folks to you.
As a recruiter, when you look through that huge pile of resumes, are there things that are immediately red flags? Like things that you say, out, 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 like you just put them aside because they're not even a contender. What are those things?
Good question. So, the first thing that pops into my head is, is somebody who's jumped around a lot.
Okay.
We call them job hoppers. It's never a good look, to have worked at, I don't know, let's just say 10 different jobs in the past 3 years or 5 years, and spent, 6 months to a year, I'd say less than a year at the majority of them. Um, it's been a hot market, hot industry,
Hmm.
at least in my particular space, in the advertising digital creative space. Uh, but even for us, like they're definitely warning signs, and our clients rarely, like we unless it's for a consulting position, like a short-term freelance
Hmm.
type role, they don't want to hire somebody full-time like that. I mean, it takes, it takes a lot of time to get people, up to speed, and by the time they get them trained and up and running, they're off looking for something else. So that's a huge red flag. Um, other signs are somebody who's actually been out of work for an extended period of time. Generally speaking, I imagine a lot of people are unfortunately going to be in that position. I mean, in this country, we have over 30 million people who've applied for unemployment.
Hmm.
So the kind of the good news is if it's happening now, then they have an excellent explanation.
Right.
Um, in terms of what else, I mean, a poorly written resume, something that's poorly edited, it's not clear and concise. Those are other red flags as well.
Typos, grammar mistakes, that kind of thing.
Yes, yes, and also one thing I got to tell you, huge pet peeve of ours is when we get a resume that's completely out of left field. It doesn't have, because we work on a lot of particular types of jobs, obviously,
Hmm.
and we're looking for skill sets. As recruiters, we have to be very precise as agency recruiters. So somebody who's coming from an accounting background, applying to a pharmaceutical project management role, that's not going to fly.
Hmm.
So I think for job seekers, be very careful about applying to jobs that you're actually qualified to do. You don't have to be 100% qualified. Um, but make sure like you're
You're
certainly
kind
not
of qualified.
yeah, you're kind of qualified.
Right.
And it's something where like every new job you're going to have a learning curve, but don't make it a showstopper.
Right.
um
So I could
yeah.
never, I'm a coach, but I could never be a hockey coach, for example. That would never fly.
I don't know. Are you good at hockey?
I'm really not.
Okay,
Um,
probably not then.
probably not. Okay, so let's go to like the job interview. And I understand
Mm,
as a recruiter, you're probably doing like first level job interviewing, but then
yes.
ultimately it's the employer's job to kind of complete that cycle. Are there any specific questions that you would encourage an employer to first stay away from, and then are there certain questions that you would say, yes, you must ask these questions? Like these are really important.
For an employer as opposed to
Yeah.
employee. Okay.
Employer. So I am interviewing a
Yes.
candidate.
Hmm.
Here are the questions I must ask. Are there some questions that really give me insight into the person's character, stamina, whatever it is that I'm looking for?
Yes, absolutely. I would say ask them, very objectively speaking, what are you looking for? What are you looking to do next? Um, I find that it shows, it demonstrates care.
Mhm,
um you actually want to know what like deep down their where their interests lie, and also make sure they're on track. That they actually, it's one thing to have the particular skill set, but you also want to make sure somebody's going to be excited to do the kind of the job or task at hand. Another great question is, why are you looking to leave? Why are you looking to leave your current job?
yeah,
Assuming they're still currently employed.
mhm,
um, Again, for myself, when I ask that question, things to look out for are somebody who's too negative, like bashing their current employer. Never a good look. Also,
mhm.
for any prospective candidates out there, best to keep it very positive when you are asked that particular question. In terms of what else, situational questions. If you're in this situation, how would you handle it? As opposed to just asking somebody, do you have the skill set? Have you done this before? Because
Mhm,
they're going to yes you to
mhm,
death.
mhm.
So good to get some, have ask those type of questions. Maybe do some role plays, and see how they answer those in the moment. Um,
Are there any ways to extract productivity? Um, Whether or not a person is a self starter or whether they need a lot of hand holding, like maybe more kind of initiative based questions, or like, do you have what it takes to work independently and on your own? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you ask that type of question, they're going to tell you yes, of course.
Sure.
Um, one great question, I have is, you know, um, tell me, a time you succeeded,
Hmm.
a recent time where you had a professional success,
Hmm.
and how did you get there? And conversely, tell us about a time when you had when you had a challenge or even you failed, and how did you handle that?
Hmm.
um, and you want to look for real wins, like demonstration that somebody is a high performer. And also, when it comes to failure, that somebody is willing and able to talk about a genuine failure, and how they learned and adapted from that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
I remember talking to someone not that long ago who had a
mhm,
recommendation for a series of like two really interesting questions. The first question is, who was your favorite teacher in high school? And what made them your favorite teacher? The second question was, who was your least favorite teacher in high school? And what made them your least favorite teacher? In order to understand how they respond to leadership. Thought that was really, really good, really powerful, and helped me also to perhaps pick up patterns in terms of what they respond well to and what
mhm.
they struggle with. What do you think of those questions?
I think they're great. I'm taking a mental log of those questions, because I think any questions that also get somebody out of the kind of like interview mode as
Hmm.
well, that throw them off a little bit,
Right.
are great questions, because a lot of people are excellent interviewers. I mean, for us, we interview recruiters. We're a large part of what we do is sales,
Hmm.
and many people are very good at selling during the interview. But when it comes to actually working and performing, they don't show up in the same way that you would have expected them to. So, yeah, I think those questions that are, kind of like something that are difficult for somebody to prepare for ahead of time,
Right.
unless of course they've heard that question before. Um, yeah, I think you'll be able to uh, see a different side of them that you wouldn't otherwise have been.
So let's flip the table. So
Hmm.
now I'm a person who's going for a job interview. Um, is there a way for me to kind of stand out over the crowd to get noticed, for example? How should I do that? Like, should I just submit my resume or should I be calling them and kind of following up, you know, once or twice a week? Like, what's the way to kind of rise above all the noise?
You know what, Kim? It's a very difficult time to find a job right now. And yeah, like if you were just applying to a regular old job on LinkedIn, uh, yeah, you kind of, excuse me, submit your application or resume and hope it yields results. Um, and if you were able to actually get a hold of that person's direct email somehow, or you have access to it. A lot of times, like for example, if you apply for a job on LinkedIn, you can apply directly on LinkedIn, and the person will list their email. What you can do is apply, send your application, but also shoot a quick email to the hiring manager or their HR person to say, um, hey, just want to, I sent you I sent my resume today. I just
Mhm,
want to, make sure that you saw it. And if you have any questions, please let me know. It's kind of like one little extra step that you can do to make yourself noticed. And I would say, you didn't ask this particular question, but I'm going to go off on a tangent if that's okay. Right now is a really good time to reach out to people that you know.
mhm,
It's not the best time to to hit up people cold that you haven't spoken to before. But if you're looking for a job, use your network. Reach out to people that you know.
mhm,
Yeah, best thing to do is get them on on the phone and have a conversation, see how they're doing. And a lot of people need help. They might, be in a similar situation. Be empathetic to that, and then be vulnerable and tell them about your particular issue.
mhm.
Um, so, of course, this is in relation to COVID and what we're going through, and if you're, if you're out of work. But I mean, same thing could serve you well just when you're looking for a job. So I would say, how do you distinguish yourself? It's actually utilizing your network and the people that you know for and to that point, let's say you find a job, you send your resume, um, try and find somebody who's somehow connected to that company. Maybe if somebody works there, terrific that
Mhm,
hit them up, let them know that you sent in your resume, your application, see if they can put a good word in for you,
mhm.
or just anybody who might have a connection with that company. So that's the one. That's really the only, like I would say that's the most effective way to distinguish
So
yourself.
one of the things that your company does is you help people who are looking for work in preparing for them. So some degree of career coaching. Would you
Hmm.
agree?
Oh, absolutely.
So how do
Yeah.
you help them? Like what are the services that you provide for because I think some of the people who are listening are both on the employer and the employee side of the equation where they're like, okay, well, I don't know what's going to happen next. I've just been laid off and I need to kind of get myself ready. What should I be doing?
So, I mean, it sounded like there were kind of two different questions in there, but I'll start with what do we,
Always.
yeah, what do we do for our candidates?
Yeah.
I mean, we really go above and beyond for our candidates. I mean, I think there are a lot of agencies, recruiters out there who will just, sometimes they just collect resumes and send them to their clients and just hope that they get a response. Or a lot of times candidates don't even know where they're being sent. Um, for us, we don't operate like that. We have a conversation with the candidate first. Like we,
Mhm.
we we do our own version of an interview, and that question that I said that hiring managers should be asking, like, what type of opportunity are you looking for? We start there and we would let them speak. We
Mhm,
listen, and I think that's one thing that we definitely do is we listen, and we want to find out all about what um, their professional wants and desires are, their cultural wants and desires, what they're looking for in a company, and that includes what they're not looking for. We do ask that question: Why are you looking to leave your current employer? And it starts by genuinely caring about our candidate and what they're looking for. And when we do send them to a job, well, first of all, we tell them all about it, make sure they feel qualified and interested before actually submitting them. So we're very particular in our approach to how we
mhm.
represent our candidates. So, and you had another question.
About the coaching that you provide, right?
Yes. So the coaching, it doesn't, it starts from the first conversation, um, to really, coaching is a lot of, and you know better than I do. This is your primary, not hockey coaching, but coaching people. Um, you ask questions in order to peel back the layers of the onion.
Right.
So our first conversation starts with that, to really get to the root of what they're looking for. And it's really easy, you're talking to a project manager, to stop at, oh, so you're a project manager, you're looking for project management jobs, yes, okay, great. So for us, it's tell us more about that.
Right.
We really try and get them to open up, because we have a lot of different clients that may or may not be a fit for them, based
Mhm,
on not just what they would be doing professionally, but also the team. Like we're about selling people, making a match with people, and that's people within the company, and employees that are looking
so
to
it sounds like
get
you have
hired.
a specific process that you use to help candidates not only figure out what it is they want, but to find the right match on the other side. So it's twofold. Like, let's figure out what your experience has been, but also where you want to be going. So there's a coaching process associated with that. And at the same time, you have, I'm guessing, a bank of possible job opportunities, and you're kind of really there to make the proper match,
That's
right? Because
correct, yeah.
because I know from my own experience in coaching so many people who have taken jobs to then say, man, I made a mistake, or man, I don't know why I'm here so long, I hate it here,
Hmm.
etc. You want to minimize that buyer's remorse, and you want to make sure that the match is better way up front, so you're helping people to figure out what their strengths are, and as you say, peel back the onion to make sure that what they are going for is a match to not only their strengths, but their desires.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Yeah. And then
So
you're saying, here are the different opportunities available to you.
yes. Yeah. And again, they're not always going to be 100%
Right.
exactly what they're looking for, but if they're 75, 80%, then that's usually usually good enough. And they'll know when they meet with those folks in person, or I guess in this case over a Zoom or telephone interview. Um, and yeah, and we also coach them through the interview process. We schedule them, which is more complicated than it sounds. Prep them for the interviews, give them, get their feedback, coach them how to write a proper thank you note,
Mm.
um, and we actually do the negotiating for them. But that's something that we coach them on as well. Like
So
making sure their price tag is realistic.
yeah. So two
Yeah.
questions.
Hmm.
So again, what do you recommend for the prospective employee in the
Yeah.
job interview? Is there something they should be asking? Is there something they should be saying? Is there some way that they need to show up? Like, what's your recommendation on that one?
So, there are, a few good questions. What I think are very good questions to ask. Some in general, and some during COVID times. So, one great question is simply to ask the interviewer, "What do you like about working here?" tells you a lot about, the company's culture.
Great
You know,
question. I love that question. Yeah.
yeah, like what's kept them there, or maybe they'll get a sense of that the person doesn't like it. But essentially, it's a good window into, like whether that person's expectations meet up with theirs. Another great question is, a lot of people will say, "Oh, what are your biggest challenges right now?" Instead of that question, I prefer to have my candidates ask, if I were to start working there tomorrow, what could I do to make the biggest impact?
Great question.
Yeah. So those are two
That's
questions.
that's the kind of question a driven person asks.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The challenges question, fine, the person will tell you their pain points, but it's not about how to solve them. That question is about, how do I solve your pain points?
Hmm.
And one COVID question. Um, so tell me about the office space. What is it like? Now, obviously, I'm not going to be able to. I'm not going to be able to see it during this
Right.
interview process. But tell
Right.
me, what is the atmosphere like?
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think about this question? Um, if when you're hiring your candidate, what does a home run look like? Like, is that a good question?
Yeah, it's you know what? I steer away from the perfect questions, because if you set yourself up, for um, being the perfect candidate, then you're
Hmm.
probably going to do yourself a disservice, because nobody is the perfect candidate. Because if they say things like, well, if they have, like X, Y, and Z, and you don't have X, Y, and Z, then you're kind of, you're stuck there, just kind of nodding your head. I would say another good question to ask is, what made you decide to interview me today?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's a
that's a
good
that's a
question.
good alternative to the
Yeah.
home run question.
Yeah, that's a better question. Okay, I'm going to ask you one last question, but it's a
Sure.
little bit different. So, what do you think of the idea of asking? So, you're, let's say, unemployed or you have a job, but you're not quite satisfied. What do you think about the idea of asking a person to be your mentor? Good idea, bad idea, awkward? What do you think?
That's a great question, Kim. I found that mentorship just happens. You don't, yeah, like for me, I've had a few mentors, and it's usually started because I've sought help from them. And a lot of successful people out there are actually craving to mentor somebody, even if they
Hmm.
don't say it out loud. So they have an outlet. They've had their success, and they're in a position. People are actually naturally inclined to help out other folks. So especially when you're in that level and you're no longer trying to survive in business, or even thrive when you've made it, you're at a point where it feels a lot more comfortable, or desirable, I should say, to help out others altruistically. So you just mentorship just happens, and it starts by reaching out to somebody, and asking them questions, asking them for help. Um, I would, like a lot of times I've my mentors, I've met them at networking events,
Hmm.
um, or something of that nature, and I've said, hey, I was really impressed with your speech. I mean, a lot of times it's somebody who was on a panel,
Right.
gave a great presentation, so it started there. And then say, hey, I'd love to uh, grab a call with you, or a coffee or whatever. And if they
Hmm.
go for it, then you're on the road to having a great mentor.
Hmm. Hmm. Very quick story. So, as you know, I have 5 kids. One of them was in business school. He recently graduated here in kind of not far from Toronto, one of the top business schools in Canada. But he was at this event where there were a series of speakers.
Hmm.
One of them was the president of Aston Martin, the car company.
Oh yeah.
So, by the way, I never even heard of Aston Martin before this. That just tells
That's a
you
shame,
how
Kim.
up to up to date
It's,
I
it's
am.
a it's a James Bond car. How could you
Okay,
not have heard of
apparently.
Aston Martin?
Anyway, so
Yes.
this woman goes and does a presentation and she's talking about what it takes to succeed, the personality, the style, the grit, and clear out of nowhere, she points out at my son and says, "You see that guy? He's been sitting here smiling for the past hour. That's what you need." Picked him out of a crowd. He went up to her, said, "Thank you so much." And she said, "Can I take a picture with you?" So this happened about a year and a half ago, and ever since then, she has been his mentor.
Wow.
They talk like once a month. But you never know where a mentor is going to come out from, right?
Yeah.
But I just thought that was a good story.
That's really cool on multiple levels. I mean that type of situation where somebody call. I mean, if you have that opportunity, jump all over it, no question. I think your son has done a terrific job capitalizing on that moment and that relationship. But yeah, I mean, a lot of those, I would say a lot of those situations start with that moment. And I would venture to guess he's never actually said to her, are you my mentor or can you be my mentor? It just kind of evolved.
It kind of evolved. You're
Yeah.
100% right. And
Hmm.
having said that, I'll tell you one more story. I got an email, like a LinkedIn email from a gentleman who said, I am looking to be a coach and I am looking for a mentor. And can I please offer you my services in exchange for some mentorship? And I read through it and I thought it was very interesting because it was a well crafted letter. And I thought it was somewhat bold, like I'll do anything for you. Just please give me a little bit of direction, etc.
Hmm.
So I asked him a couple of questions. I said, what do you do now? Where are you in life? What do you want to do? And also, who else did you reach out to? And it turned out that he took this same letter and crafted it and wrote it out for, I don't know, three or four other coaches, but none of them replied. I was the
Mm.
only one who replied, and ended up talking to this young man who, like, it was very interesting because I had a Zoom call with him. He happens to be from the Philippines, very understated, very self-proclaimed kind of introverted, but super, super smart, right? And
Hmm.
so, and like for me, you're right. I am that person who is happy to help, but I'm much more happy to help when someone says, I'm in, right? Like I'm willing to do the work, to do what it takes to get engaged. I'm not going to be passively engaged in that kind of relationship. I want someone who's actively engaged.
Which makes sense. I mean,
Totally. Yeah.
I think, that's a wonderful story, by the way. And I'm sure that individual is very grateful. But it's really, as a mentee, it's certainly your job to reach out to your mentor. And one thing, I've also found is if you find opportunity to give value back,
Yeah.
then do it. It could be as simple as, and I've done this with my mentors. It could be as simple as saying, understanding that they're interested in golf and sending them a great article you read about improving their
Yeah.
swing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right. But yeah, I think that having a mentor is a great way to open doors in a way that's comfortable, that's easy, that's gracious, that's, just feels, I think a lot, just I think that kind of relationship is super important. So if there's
Hmm.
anybody out there that could help, my guess is, especially right now, people are wanting to help. So don't
Yeah,
be afraid to reach out. Yeah.
yeah, 100%. This is a time where they're also willing to just have conversations. I found, an example, a short story. I called a client yesterday, somebody I hadn't spoken to in a while, and our conversations generally last 5 to 10 minutes. Um, and yesterday we spoke for 45 minutes, and we were talking about family,
Hmm.
friends, what we were going through. We talked about, of course, we cover professional, but it was like almost like the beginning of of a actual friendship.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think now people are looking for friendships. They're looking for conversations. They're putting their phones down and not texting as much. They're actually picking up the phone.
Yes.
Um,
Answering the call.
they're answering the call. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Mark, how do people reach you? Where do they find you if they're an employer looking to hire or if they're an employee looking for some coaching?
Great question. Uh, you can certainly find me via our website, which is www.digitalent.com. That's digital and talent squashed together. And also via my email. Am I allowed to give that
Yes,
on the show?
please.
Sure.
Sure.
Okay. It's Mark, Mark at Digitalent. digitalent.com. Those are the best ways to reach me.
I loved your questions, your interview questions. I think they were home run questions, so thank you for that. Please reach out to Mark if there's anything you want to know, whether you're an employer or someone seeking employment. Reach out to Mark. I think he has access to a lot of opportunities, but more than that, he has a great deal of experience and lots of years under his belt. Mark, thank you so much for spending this time with me. Thank you for sharing your expertise. Again, I loved your questions, and I'm sure we'll talk very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Kim. This was great. This is a lot of fun.